You will have seen the memes by now, I'm sure. Some people on the parapolitical side of things have understandably succumbed to crowing. I told you so. With regards to the you know what files. Now, first of all, one of the memes I did like, just so I, get off my moral high horse for a little moment, is the ones that say flat earthers when they realize everyone else's memes are coming true except theirs, and it's usually someone in distress. It's cute. Nevertheless, I'm not sure it's the most useful response, crowing. And I'm not even sure, I wasn't sure until I guess I made a few notes and hit record that there is a useful response. Not that you'd know it from looking, because boy, howdy, the commentariat, I suppose, is understandably latched onto this. And in fact, that's kind of one of the things that I want to share with you here as we move up to a meta model of what's going on. That's what I realized. Oh, there is actually a useful response, as far as I can tell. So I'm going to tell you about it. I want to begin with how I came to this, I guess, archaeological knowledge for the OGs out there. And then I want to talk to you about how you can be with this reality, which is a little bit about the model, as in the blended cycle model, as in my predictive framework. And then what sitting with something like that model invites you to be as we move through this process. But firstly, let me just thank you for your patience with my absence. It has been a roaring start to 2026. So I've been convening a shadow work intensive called the Shaman's Devil. By the way, it's fantastic to have shadow workers who are deep in the process to bounce this fucking wacky new reality off. So shout out to cohort 2 of the Shaman's Devil for sure. And I've also been working on material for the shamanic training and initiation that I'm offering. So those take time away from things that I quite like doing. I will say, in addition to that, I have some grand plans, having sat with a general dissatisfaction with the podcasting form for almost a year. I have some fun plans. So stick around, and thank you for your patience. But let me begin with how I came to my archaeological knowledge, and even where that term comes from, because if you were new, good Lord, you might not even have been born when there were blogs. Anyway, I moved to London 2 weeks before Lehman Brothers collapsed. So I had a very bracing experience of the difference between official reality and what was going on in the street, and I lost all my money and so on. Eventually, I did get a job, and many of them actually, because I kept getting made redundant. But working in London media and being a little bit good at it after a while, there's stuff that you hear or see on the edges of things that make you go, okay, there is something to, let's say, the Savile situation. And frankly, anyone in the middle class in southern England has one of those 2 steps removed stories. So I became particularly interested in it after my first redundancy at Discovery Channel, having lost all my money and so on, and going like, I need to get to the bottom of this, because what I'm being told about reality is not actually what happens. And thus began a multi-year project on the blog called Archaeology, which was one of the, back in the days prior to the podcast, that was one of the big, you can still find the content sort of on the internet. The website, of course, still exists and so on, but good fucking luck searching for that kind of material. Nevertheless, that was there. But the other things that started to happen in real life. So let me give you an example. My hairdresser in Chiswick, and I know this sounds like my cousin's aunt's co-worker's barista, but follow, because this is actually quite close, because he was from a small town in the Midlands. So his brother's friend was in the police force. So my hairdresser's brother's friend sounds like a lot. It's not. It's a small town, like a village. They all grew up together. Because I was deep in my archaeology, getting my hair cut one day. And he basically said, some of that Savile stuff is even worse than you think with regards to these psychopaths pretending like satanic rituals in the woods and whatever, and that there really is, particularly, I don't know, probably the same in the US, but there really is at a like local county level this kind of shenanigans occasionally going on. So there's no reason for him, that was his, let me get this right, his brother's friend was warned off, and it's like, okay, well, this is, that's how this stuff always works. But there were also, I got to meet some powerful people who were never, not like Epstein list people, Christ, but people who moved in those circles, who kind of knew other stuff was going on. So I was, let's say, primed to realize that, and then by the time I became a shamanic practitioner, I have several clients now actually whose families have been involved in a lot of that, not a lot, but the local level, like municipal level child trafficking type stuff. So I would always defend from the point of view of like, no, I have people who are involved in this, to the scoffers. And then, of course, we got to Pizzagate, which was always about the Podesta emails. There was like a distraction thing there that Hillary Clinton's running a satanic pedophile ring in the basement of a pizza shop. But nevertheless, we have the same words in the Podesta emails that we're now getting in the Epstein documents. This made complete sense to me, and it was stuff I was talking about at the time. So I came to it through sense making of the difference between official reality and reality, and then encounters with it. So maybe in a way I was blessed, right, to be primed for this information. Speaking of Charles Eisenstein, actually, which I'll mention him in a minute, he just put out a video where he's talking about how the shadow reality is intruding on reality at the moment, which is to say how the world really runs is being shown. I would argue, because this is part of the model, that's been the case. So would he, frankly, but that's been the case for a number of years. The Israel stuff, stolen elections, whatever you want, like all of this kind of thing. The NATO war stuff, like it's just what's, when I started on Substack a couple of years ago, I wrote a post that's still getting a whole bunch of views, which is about that, which is like the flesh is being boiled off the skull. Like now we see how the Western world is built and under what frameworks of convenience we live. Because in the case of the Epstein network, you live well, at least historically, because that exists, because there are Anglo-Zionist American powers that want things that are aligned with your wants with regards to affordable energy and imports and so on, like that. And you may have noticed when you've gone to fill up your car of late, that world is over, right? But now we're seeing what it takes. Now we're seeing what it takes to build an empire, and this is actually how they fall. So that's how I came to it. Let me tell you a little bit about the model. As I said, the blended cycle model. It sounds very fancy. It is essentially stacked forecasting models that are then weighted depending on which one of them has picked up a particular event most accurately. So that's it. Like if you're very interested in it, and you should be, it's 20 years of work. The Time Magic course in the premium membership has that as the prize at the end. But it's simple, truly. It's stacked forecasting models. And I think what's made it so successful is that I don't give a fuck if astrology or Kondratiev waves or whatever is the most accurate. And I don't try to explain one by the other, which is the astrologer's problem. Like even as I said, Kondratiev wave or Schumpeter's waves of creative destruction, I know that people will say, well, that's a Neptune-Uranus relationship. And all right, I'm batting a pretty good game here. So whatever, right? Because we come to the beginning of the decade. We come to March 2020. And what's so interesting about doing the regular astrology episodes is that you can go back and look. I've got screenshots from 2021 of when different things will land with regards to wars and so on. So the model works pretty good. Archaeology and the model. How do they go together? Because it's like, all right, well, is the world, first of all, it's not run by satanic pedophiles. I did a video about 6 weeks ago for the premium members, sort of explaining what the actual global elite belief system is, because it's not satanic. Now, there are people in it that do that, but the belief system at the top is, and we're seeing it in the emails, like this is another thing that's turned out to be 150% correct, is an extreme nihilist libertarianism where you do not matter. You do not matter to them because there are no rules in the universe. Why people get that confused with Satanism is that that's a version of, like an immature version of satanic thought. So they're not Satanists in the sense of worshiping Satan, but they're behaving satanically according to people who think like that. That's why it gets caught in a loop. Anyway, the video's in the members area, going into more detail. Because, for instance, we're seeing some stuff in there that is in that fever dream world, but not all of it. And when I say not all of it, they're not signing off their fucking emails with Hail Satan or anything, are they? It's grosser than that, frankly. It's fucking way grosser than that. So what is it then? Because when it came to, I remember joking with Austin about this, that when it comes to, say, the pandemic, Bill Gates didn't cause the pandemic. This moment caused Bill Gates and the pandemic, right? So what's quote unquote running the world? Is it a conspiracy of elite pedophiles? Or is it, let's say, astrology, which caused it? You know what I mean there, right? Like, I don't mean astrology is causing pedophilia. I mean, what do you think is the rhythm of reality? What do you think structures reality? What is the story above the story? So we have a dimensional magic masterclass in the membership, which looks at flatland. So the pedophile elite is flatland. Spaceland, when you jump up dimensionally, is what it takes to compost the West. So the story, the quote unquote true story, or at least the story the next dimension up, is the composting of the West. Okay, because do you remember the movie? This is weird. All right, my Gen X nerds out there, do you remember the TV adaptation of Stephen King's The Langoliers? It had Balki Bartokomous in it. If you are a loser and you don't know what that is, it's something like an airplane gets struck by lightning and gets pushed back in time like 5 minutes. And so there's all these people in the plane, and there are these like demon Pac-Man monsters that are like destroying, like composting, munching reality. And they run along behind like the present moment, eating reality. And these guys are stuck a few minutes behind time. It's not exactly that, but this moment is being composted. This is the end of the West. And it's not Epstein caused the end of the West. It's this is the end of the outbreath of an imperial model, because they all end in total corruption. I actually, this was either going to be an impromptu podcast, which it is, or a Substack post, which is another thing I'd love to get back to. And the joke was going to be, I taught my boomer dad astrology, kinda. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure many of you have, if you are still blessed to have aged parents who have not yet gone home, every time I go back to Newcastle, he slid back into the boomer slapaganda of Sky News, which is like Fox News but Australia, and has all these like Putin's a maniac, blah blah blah, warmongering claptrap, and also reactivity to the end of the West as it's happening in Australia, because it's happening here as well, because it's happening to the West. And I'm like, you need to read a book, Dad. And he loves audiobooks at the moment. He's got a serious health issue, which means he spends a lot of time, I'm not going to tell you about it, but he spends a lot of time with a machine, about 90 minutes a day, boomer cyborging up to go about his day, which means he spends a lot of time listening to audiobooks. So I said, get The Fourth Turning is Here by Neil Howe, which is the update of the famous The Fourth Turning. And it's astrology, because it is a model of how civilizations end. And they essentially, it's that whole, like, what is it? Bad man. good men create bad times, that quadrant thing, right? And we're in the end of it. There's no fixing this, right? So it's not, that information is very useful to you when it comes to choosing what level of reactivity you are after, what reactivity is called for in this moment. Flatland is the pedo elites. Spaceland is the total corruption that putrefies and collapses this phase of Western civilization. And that's what the model's good for. The model is good for sense making at the level up. Now, that doesn't mean, I guess, what? So we just don't have to care about it? It's just, this is just what happened? It's like, no. That is a meditation bell. Whenever you feel the call to reactivity, which is very understandable, that's a meditation bell, okay? Because the fourth toning, the 2032 and Armstrong's model, collapse of the West, whatever you want. My shamanic healing teacher, Alberto Violdo, refers to this as the great experiment. And in this experiment, you don't want to be in the control group, okay? The great experiment is not just the end of the West. This is the Pachacuti and so on. The great experiment is how we are living now is wrong on every level. How we work, how we eat, how we interact with each other. And it's causing everything from obese children to satanic pedophiles. That's the meta story. Yeah. Something Charles Eisenstein said, just to back it up, when he was saying shadow reality is intruding on actual reality. And that doesn't mean, that's a cause to be aware, not to jump to another story, which might be wrong. This is the David Icke era, shall we say. I previously had a lot of love for him, still do. He's the OG, he's a goat. But his most recent turn on Higher Side Chats wasn't his best. But nevertheless, it's like, see, I was right about Epstein, therefore all this other stuff is right, is what Charles Eisenstein is cautioning you against. That may not necessarily be true. Don't jump from one wrong story to another wrong story. Stay at a meta level. Stay at this spaceland rather than trying to solve it at flatland, because it's at spaceland, the hyperdimensional, the level of spirit, whatever you want, that you will hear that meditation bell, that call, like, okay, we're in the great experiment. I don't want to be in the control group. What is mine to do? Because this doesn't get fixed. This is the other medicine of the framing of this as the end of the West. When you're up in Spaceland, when it's the cosmic forces that are such a weird way of saying this, go with me on it. Cosmic forces generating a satanic pedophile network. Holy shit. They're also, these forces are Langoliers. They're composting everything. And it's not supposed to be fixed. Like, this doesn't get fixed. Look at the disaster with ice raids and the latest one. God, someone's giving him mostly, I mean, he's giving himself bad advice, but someone's giving him quite good advice, like reopening the stolen election stuff from 2020 in the lead up to the midterms is so that you can have full federal control over the election. Anyway, so there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's going on with the end of the West. So it doesn't get fixed. The other thing that I would suggest, this is another Charles Eisenstein point, collapse won't save us. So this doesn't get fixed, this ends, but collapse doesn't save you, not automatically. It's not like, oh, well, once this is all over, everything will be great. It won't. It will only be great if we make it great. It will only be great if we step into the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. So stepping up to the level of the higher dimensional doesn't mean you don't care. If you are feeling reactivity to what I'm saying at the level of, and I can, to some extent, I'm sure it's true that I am dissociating a little bit from this truly horrifying information. I just watched a Katie Halper video looking at emails between UCLA and Epstein about improving babies' ability to suck. So yes, I freely admit some of this might be a necessary dissociation. But it doesn't mean don't care to step up to, oh, this is meant to happen. I find that the people who are most reactive to framing the experience of profound trauma and injustice at the level of the sacred, at the level of meaning, are the ones who are like the least attached to it. Because I know this from my client work. When I gently moved the discussion of someone, processing and moving through trauma, when I gently moved the discussion in that direction, they're like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I came to Earth to have that particular step further. Do you know what I mean? Like, you will find that the people who have gone through it have found that correctly that there is a bigger and sacred and mysterious meaning to it, which is not the same thing as approval. It's the meditation bell ringing again to what do I alchemize this into? What is mine to do with this experience, with this story? So moving into the next frame up, moving into the spaceland, up from the flatland of what's going on, isn't a lack of care. It is a call to, well, actually, this is the level that we're most effective. This is the level of the field, the level of magic where we're most effective. Think about Joe Dispenza. Think about when he talks about matter affecting matter is hard, energy affecting matter is easy. We find immediately the medicine of coherence when we step up, like, oh yeah, I didn't expect it and would have preferred it maybe to be some other form of total corruption, but here it is. And there's no one picking it, and collapse doesn't save us. So stay coherent and ask for where the nodal moves are when it comes to what is mine to do, what is yours to do, obviously. Make nodal interventions. And that's a term I learned from Carol Sanford, who was on the show many years ago. She's since passed. And if you don't know, if you haven't listened to that episode, it's fucking great. But she was raised on the Texas Panhandle by a grandfather who was a Mohawk elder and another grandfather in the Klan. Very mid-20th century Texas story, right? And became this like uber successful Fortune 100 consultant, basically an animist consultant who would go in and improve productivity in teams or whatever by field shifting, by shifting the field in like, I don't know, a Goldman Sachs bond sales team. And she would do it by making nodal interventions. So where the energy you put in, let's say, is 5%, or let's do 1% in, 20 times out. Where are the nodal interventions in reality? Ask for them. Ask spirit, ask your cards, ask whatever. Because this is in the model. And that's not a cynical statement. That's it's a hopeful statement. Because the model has some, like, we're 1/3 of the way through it, but the model has some shit ahead of us, but some better stuff after it. So I choose to see it as hopeful. And I certainly choose to see it as a meditation bell to be the thing that comes next, eventually.